838, Big 550 KTRS. David Stokes is with us. Show Me Institute policy analyst. Good morning, David Stokes.
Good morning, McGraw. Good morning, Kelly.
Good morning.
I know we want to talk a little Uber and Lyft. However, David Nicholas of the Post-Dispatch had a great story about something you were crowing about a couple weeks ago.
He did. He was talking about the tax abatement that was approved for a new office, but not really all retail and mostly apartment complex,
right?
A condo complex in the heart of downtown Clayton, and they passed a very substantial tax abatement for it. Giving, what does that mean? It means that the people who are developing that property and then will buy it and own it aren't going to be responsible for the same level of taxes that everybody else in Clayton is.
So Clayton blighted this corner of Clayton.
Right,
I didn't know Clayton was blighted.
Right. And you're correct. It is not blighted. They just have this legal sleight of hand that you have to call things blighted.
Right.
But you can call anything blighted in Missouri.
Right. So they blight this corner, and then they get all these tax incentives to build a luxury, high-end apartment complex.
Right. Like on the list of things we should not be subsidizing, and like luxury condos are probably high in the list of things that don't need to be subsidized by other taxpayers. And I think, look, if Clayton can afford to not have this complex pay property taxes, and to the extent that everybody else will, they can afford to lower the property taxes for everybody. They just raised property taxes in Clayton in April.
Right.
And now here they are saying, oh, okay, well, you, new developer on this corner, you don't have to pay full boat.
So those who will be living there and buying high-end condos won't have to pay.
Well, I think the interesting thing you brought up, and the interesting thing that the article brought up, was they're not going to charge less, right? But the property is going to be worth more because they don't have that regular tax. So the developer keeps the difference, right? It's still going to be market rate apartments.
Right. What the article did a nice job of discussing is the abatement. Once cities start doing this, what happens is that the abatement becomes capitalized into the price of the property. So they're really helping out the people selling the land because they expect to get an abatement, and this will happen more and more in Clayton now. That bumps up the price of the land.
Right.
So
the land's more valuable because you're paying less in taxes.
Mm-hmm. Correctly. So you really help out the people who sell it, and then you really help out the people who buy it through less taxes. Who do you hurt? Well, you hurt the other taxpayers in the community. And it is just infuriating. And it's frustrating that Clayton, been one of the cities in the area that was more strict about this than most of the other cities who give these TIFs and tax abatements away like they're giving away cookies. And now to see Clayton going down more and more of this path is disappointing.
All right. Uber and Lyft, good news. They're allowing Uber and Lyft here in town, right? Well, power to the people.
Right. Yes, it is good news. There's a decision tomorrow at the Metropolitan Taxi Cab Commission where they are expected to approve the entry of Uber into the premium sedan market in St. Louis, meaning that it's not just their regular taxi cabs. I know they say they aren't technically taxi cabs, but for all intents and purposes, they operate like cabs. It's their premium sedan service. You schedule it ahead of time. There's a minimum charge, I understand, of $25. That's sort of the big limiting factor here, is that nobody's going to call it to go down to the Cardinal game for $25 plus tip if you're just coming from the Central West End. So it limits the size of it. It's good. It's good that the Metropolitan Taxi Cab Commission has made some changes to allow it, but it's not nearly enough. And if they think it's enough, then they're just trying to mislead people because they're still keeping Uber and Lyft out for the services that the average person wants and needs.
So they're basically allowing Uber and Lyft to compete with the limo drivers?
Just Uber. Lyft doesn't have such a service. They're allowing Uber to compete
with the town car.
With the town car premium sedan service. And I could be wrong here. I don't think St. Louis has a huge market in this line of work, the premium sedan town car. It's not like New York where people live without cars and they take cabs around Manhattan and they take premium sedans to go farther away.
Right.
So, but it's great that they're coming. It's not nearly enough.
So you think it's a step then in the direction of, well, then maybe after this goes for a while, then maybe we will allow the lower end Uber services or not?
I hope so. I'm not confident. I think the politicians and the commission will say, hey, we met them halfway. Mm-hmm. We've done our part. This is enough. Now they need to adopt our rules. every time you hear somebody say it's all about just a level playing field between the existing companies and Uber, and it's about playing by the rules, keep in mind that they set the rules. The Metropolitan Taxi Cab Commission has imposed the rules. They have the existing taxi cabs that dominate the commission doing these rules to protect themselves. And that's what's just so awful about it. And whether we have changes through the state legislature amending the taxi cab commission rules, or even better, just the new appointees to that commission who go in and say, we need change, I don't care how we get it. We need to end the monopoly and the cartel on taxi cabs in this area.
Well, how can it be that the Taxi Cab Commission has this ultimate power? I mean, who set it up so that they answer to no one? I mean, everybody answers to somebody.
Well, unfortunately, in the way we do boards and commissions in the state, all too often, when they establish these boards, they make them somewhat independent, which isn't automatically bad, but then they set up the board or commission to stack it with representatives of that industry.
Right.
And the guys that, well, you need the people who know about A, B, and C to run A, B, and C. Well,
Right.
That's great if people were angels, but people aren't angels.
Right.
They take the board of commission and they institute rules to protect the current operators and limit competition. It happens every time. It happens with all sorts of different commissions. It's just the Taxi Cab Commission is a little more high profile than most, and it's something that impacts the average person's lives a little more often than most, and it needs to be changed. We need to change it for all sorts of different licensing boards, but right now the issue is Uber and Lyft, who have a product that a lot of St. Louisans want to use, and they're not being allowed to do it because of cartel protections.
But again, for them to do it, it would cost a company a fortune to sort of beat back the Taxi Cab Commission. You can take them to court, you can sue them, and you can write weeks and months and years. But what small business has that time, money, and energy to do it? And so when you talk about stifling competition, the idea is that it's so hard to overcome the Taxi Cab Commission that you just don't do it, and there is no innovation.
Absolutely. And it's one thing Uber and Lyft have sued, and they went to this. I understand that the Supreme Court just refused to hear their lawsuit. So they've sued and lost.
Right.
Lyft has, at least. But the real shame is if you're just a young immigrant here who wants to open up a 1 or 2 person taxi cab shop,
Right.
that you're not allowed to, because you have to have a set number of cabs, you have to be open 24 hours, you have to have a central dispatch system. You have all these completely outmoded rules designed under the guise of protecting the public and
Right.
offering services, really designed to protect new small operators from coming in.
So a couple weeks ago, I was at the grocery store, and I locked my keys inside my car. I had my cell phone with me, but I locked my keys inside my car. It was a Saturday afternoon. It was like 5 o'clock. I did a Google search for locked keys inside the car, and this service came up. We will unlock your car. I called it from my phone. The guy answered. He says, "Where are you?" I said, "I'm at Highway N and K." He says, "I'll be there in 7 minutes." So he's there 6-7 minutes later, calls me, pulls into the parking spot next to me. Jimmy's the lock, opens it up, charges me whatever he charges me on his phone. And I was like, "How? What?" He's like, "Oh, I'm on call. And I live in the area, and I'm the guy in this area. And so your call was routed to my phone. I was on the couch watching TV, got in my car, I came over, and I unhooked your car." And I said, "How often do you do this?" He goes, "All day long." So people lock their car, the keys in their car all day long. But it's an Uber and a Lyft service, all based on the phone, right? The GPS knows where my phone is. There's a guy in the area. I needed his service. It's exactly like Uber and Lyft, but there's no lock your keys in the car commission to tell this guy he can't do it.
Technology is changing the way that regulators are going to have to adapt. And unfortunately, the current regulating system
Right.
for Uber is completely outmoded. They're dominated by the old companies, and they're afraid of this. And they're not just afraid of it; they actively want to stop it in
Right.
many instances, because
Right.
that's where their
They
support
truly
money comes
want to
from.
protect the old way of doing things.
Right. And it's not just a shame or something. I mean, it's actively awful.
Right.
Because you're limiting the choices of consumers, you're limiting the adoption of new products and services, and you're using the power of government to impose to impose old rules on new technology, and it's just not working. And we need real wholesale changes. We should not be expecting the government to give us permission to use new products and services in this area. You should be able to just do it. There's no role for the government now in many of these things. There may have been 20 years ago, when nobody had GPS on their phone to protect you against unscrupulous taxi cab drivers.
Right.
I don't think there really was, but the argument was maybe a little better.
Right.
Now there's no need for the government middleman protecting there.
Right.
We just have to get rid of it, and we have to do it for a lot more industries too.
David Stokes, when can we read you? When can we see you?
Well, you can read all about what we write about at showmeinstitute.org, and check it out. We do have Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky coming in Thursday for a Show Me Institute fundraiser. It's for us, not for his campaigns, Thursday evening in Clayton, and you can see all about it at showmeinstitute.org.
We should say some breaking news here. The Supreme Court rejects same-sex marriage cases. That means they allow weddings to continue in 5 different states. That was a story we were talking about earlier in the day, but the Supreme Court has rejected that same-sex marriage case, so they'll allow those weddings to continue. David Stokes, have yourself a good day.
Thanks, McGraw. Thanks, Kelly.
Be safe, and we'll talk to you next Monday. 8:50, talk a little Mizzou Tigers with the voice of the Tigers, Mike Kelly.